Hey y'all, welcome back to the Tripod 2500. This is the official YouTube channel for the Tripod podcast. If this is your first time here, welcome, and to everyone else, welcome back. On this channel, I do book reviews of Trinity University Press publications, as Tripod is the official podcast of the Trinity University Press. And this channel is meant to supplement the podcast. I have guests that are usually authors or related to the San Antonio community and more broad communities as well on there. So if we're talking about a book you haven't read or maybe have questions about, this is a great place to look for some more information. And for today's tripod review, I'll be covering the TU Press publication Out There by Lance Garland. I finished this one a little bit ago, but I've finally gotten around to getting my book review together for this because this has been a favorite for sure. I think Lance might be my hero. He's fantastic. And if you don't know anything about him, you'll definitely learn some more here. And if not, check out his tripod episode as well. It's a great episode. He was one of my first Zoom interviews, so that was really fun to experiment with. And now I've gotten to do quite a few Zoom recordings. So I'm very, very grateful to him being willing to be my guinea pig in that. But today we're here to talk about his book, Out There, which is by the Trinity University Press Publications. And it's a short read, but great. So let's get into the summary. So, Out There is an adventure memoir about Lance Garland, and Lance is a veteran, he's a firefighter, nature adventurer, and writer. He's written other articles related to nature and like nature exploring and things like that, but this is his first memoir. So, while he has all these fantastic qualities that are inherently interesting, being a veteran, a firefighter, and all that, Lance's story is set apart from other memoirs by his experience as a gay man in places that have historically excluded people in the queer community, military, firefighting services, things like that. And he was a pioneer in that front. And to summarize majority of the book, there's so many messages within it that it's impossible to summarize all that this really encompasses. But the general storyline is he grows up in a highly conservative religious community where he's raised to believe that homosexuality, being gay, is a sin and unnatural. And at 19, Lance decides he wants to become a Navy SEAL. Incredible dream. And after enduring a lot of hardships throughout the training experience, which of course it's one of the most grueling training experiences out there, but also being a closeted gay man amongst wannabe Navy SEALs, that's a tough crowd. And Lance doesn't decide to leave the military even. He continues his journey in the Navy, where he serves under the don't ask, don't tell policy. So specifically not outing himself to his friends, his coworker, people he's fighting on the front lines with. And after his service, Lance becomes the first openly gay fireman in the Seattle Fire Department. So he's really just been through so many experiences where he's had to cover his identity and not really be truly himself. So he has so many great takeaways on authenticity and the struggles within the society he grew up in and aged in and still battles with as an author in the nature and memoir category. And being an outdoorsman and things like that, it's certainly become more queer inclusive thanks to people like Lance. So it's such a great first memoir. I mean, I can't wait to see what he'll write later on in his life and all the other messages he'll have taken away. He now has a kid with his partner, and I'm so excited to see what he learns through that challenge and that experience as well. But beyond the summary, I want to get into the review portion of this video. Wanting to start a little bit related to Tripod specifically, this is the only interview I've done since Lance's interview where I didn't read the book or all of the book before interviewing them. And I wish I would have read completely all of it because now I want to almost interview him again and just ask so much more related specifically to the book. But I'm still very happy with that episode. And again, if you're interested in Lance and learning more about him and getting to kind of see his personality come out, it's a great episode. But this is the only book I hadn't read prior to interviewing an author. But without reading his book, I did a lot of research on him and reading his other articles and things like that. And I had so many questions, like just so many questions that did make it into the episode. And getting to see such a personal side of him from the interview was fantastic. And Lance is a great writer. His story is so masterfully told. It moved me to tears, truly. And I wanted to take a step back and talk about that structure and writing style as part of the review because that was so critical to this memoir for me. So, something really unique about Lance's story because it could easily be told chronologically and be really interesting that way. And majority of it is chronological, but he weaves in anecdotes that kind of flow backwards in time and forwards in time to show the importance of a moment he's going through that he wouldn't have known the gravity of if, he's only writing it from this perspective now. So, the weaving of anecdotes and the use of metaphor in those anecdotes was so compelling. He has these beautiful images he invokes of a ship sinking, and he breaks his hand, and the idea of like dealing with a hidden injury and things like that, and climbing up mountains and sailing, and all of these metaphors are at play constantly. So it keeps the reader looking for that deeper meaning. Similarly to how Lance goes through all these ordeals while always having in the back of his mind an identity that he has to protect or choose to divulge, who he can trust, who he can't trust, it makes the reader become part of his story as you're reading. And it's a great mix of research he's done on other queer adventurers and other figures in history who have been part of the Navy, part of the fire department as gay people, and it's a great blend of that research. It's certainly more focused on Lance's specific perspective, but he does a great job of including those anecdotes and kind of paying homage to those who have walked this road before him. And he has a great trust of the reader as well, because there are those metaphors and that research and all that, but he doesn't just throw it in your face. It's very much you have to look into those phrasings and those sentences to pick up on that deeper meaning. So you could really just fly through this book and just read his story because it's fantastic. But to get that tear-jerking experience reading into those metaphors, there's such trust in the reader, and I really appreciated that as a reader and then interviewer as well. It gave me such room to ask him so many great questions. And I would say my other note on the structure is great pacing. He really amps up the flow of the sentence structure. You just are like going, going, going when he's going towards a climax of a situation that's really intense, of either maybe during his like fireman training or Navy SEAL training or even being, at home growing up and things like that. He knows when to put on the gas and really make the reader sweat along with him. So again, all of these are just tying the reader in to that experience with him. So I felt such a connection to what he was going through, which again, this is why it was almost nice to have done the interview first because I had this extra weight on my chest of everything he was going through because I was like, oh, that's my friend, like somebody I care about from interviewing him. And I didn't want to see him go through that, but I know he comes out the other side, this incredible person. So this book could easily be read before listening to the tripod episode or after, and it would kind of be an interesting exercise, I guess. Maybe I should listen to my own episode again and read this again. But I have so many things I could say about the structure, but I'll move on to my personal takeaways. I kind of want to start by saying that if there was a book that could emphasize Tripod's tagline of people, places, planet, this would probably be it because Tripod tries to emphasize loving and engaging with the people, places, and the planet. And this book has takeaways in each of those categories that all build on each other. He starts with saying yes to life in spite of everything, which to me is such a people related thing of he has had so many difficult encounters across his life with leadership and just people in his communities and things like that who weren't inclusive or were, pushing him to be somebody he wasn't. And he still said yes to doing so many incredible experiences, doing the fireman training, going on these incredible rock climbing mountainous hikes and getting to these summits that, he's never fathomed he could. And just saying yes to that, even though you faced so many challenges, just keep embracing that adventure. And another really interesting one on a completely other note is that oppression is written in the body, is something he says, and how the injustice he was carrying just put this weight on him, and that it was like written into his posture. And now that he is in a place where he is now, he's presents himself completely differently. And that's a takeaway that I think everybody should be cognizant of seeing that in other people and how we can uplift those around us if we recognize that they aren't given the same opportunities we are, or if maybe you're keeping somebody from an opportunity because of a bias or something like that. It is written in that person's body and in their memory. So I thought that was a great little line to get people to think a little more deeply about those around them. On that note, to have a different mindset, another quote in his book is to wear adventure tinted glasses. I asked Lance this during our interview of because I took a class at Trinity University on creative nonfiction writing, and so many ideas that we think about as ordeals, as obstacles, like facing a really difficult day or a challenge or a loss, and not seeing it as this downfall or an ordeal, but rather as an adventure that you went on. And I think Lance fits that to a T, saying adventure tinted glasses is he's done so many incredible, interesting things, but they're laced with so much hardship and challenge. But rather than getting beaten down and thinking that only the negative of everything, he had those adventure tinted glasses that kept reminding himself, oh, this is going to be a fantastic story one day. Because through the every event in this book, he was journaling, writing, and I think that is something I want to take away of just as somebody who loves to write and loves to be creative, doing creative work at the same time I'm going through challenges or facing hardship, things like that, thinking about it as it's an adventure and something that I can channel into other works. He does a great job of reminding the reader that that was his perspective, but it wasn't always that way. He had to learn that he could give back to others through this experience. Another quote that he has from the book with a great takeaway in it is, how can I expect to live if my sails aren't rigged for life? If I don't care for the vessel, it will fall apart. To me, this really resonated with all those messages out there of self-care and doing things for yourself, taking care of yourself first in order to take care of others. Because Tripod, I do a lot of writing and blogs and recordings about how people can engage with their place and engage with others. And that comes with taking care of your vessel and making sure that your sails are rigged for life and making sure you're taking care of yourself in the long run, taking breaks and engaging with your environment and building that village so when you need it, it's there. And taking ownership of those needs is something he emphasizes of you have to know what you're seeking. For him, it was that authenticity, that community and connection that he could only find by really being himself. He had to turn down other opportunities that were asking him to continue to be closeted and continue to hide his identity. And he turned them down, even though they would have been great career opportunities, because he knew that that's not what he needed. He needed to protect and care for himself, even though it would put maybe him at a deficit or a loss. He still did that because he knew that that was what would be best in the long run. And I think that's something everybody needs reminding of. And to sort of cap that off, he says that perhaps the victory is finally loving myself enough to give myself what I need. And I think that's a goal that we all have. And my last takeaway on this category is just it's not just about one peak, but the ability to keep climbing. I think that goes along with the adventure tinted glasses of summiting an achievement is fantastic, but the work and challenges and things you learned on your way there will last so much longer. And it's what you can pass off to others as well. So I think those are all my people related takeaways, but he also says a lot about place because he is such a nature and outdoorsman oriented person. And his first one that I would put in this category is to leave a place better than we found it. Simply not leaving a trace is not enough. They always say a lot with like camping and outdoor adventuring that you're supposed to like not leave a trace, which is great. But he's saying you need to do better than that. You need to leave it even better than you found it, clean it up even better, or do work outside of, that adventure to care for the world because it's the only one you've got and you need to do better than just leaving a trace. So that was a really great place related takeaway, as well as this one to me relates both to people and place, but certainly environmentalists which is loving is about being a good steward, one who doesn't own but cares as they are able. That kind of goes along with the doing better than just leaving no trace. It's if you are have the capacity to go out and be in nature and take advantage of all those things, then you need to also be able to care in that same to the same level, to that same strength, that same regard that it's given to you. So going out and spreading that joy to others and things like that is as important as getting those experiences. And lastly, a person with a clear heart and open mind can experience the wilderness anywhere on earth. He explained this better, or not better, just differently in the podcast by saying just stepping out your door and being observant and being mindful purposefully can make you feel like you're out in the wilderness any day. You can notice the growth around you and the change in seasons and the weather and how you are feeling within that environment, and that wilderness can be anywhere. And I think we're all very bogged down with the news or the media or whatever we're consuming, and we kind of forget that there is that whole world around us that's taking care of us and that we get to engage with, and that's a privilege. So those were my place-related takeaways. And then the planet takeaways are more Lance's experience in service and then his own takeaways as well. The first one being that he experiences a dissonance between being called to serve. He talks about in the book of just wanting to serve his country, wanting to be a soldier, but he's serving a country that doesn't serve him, and having to battle with that, of having that desire to serve others and care for others, but then not getting that in return. How do you deal with that? And I think we all face that now, of just, I'm out here working and doing these creative things and I'm trying to do what I love, but then, my support from my community or my country or the world is not there as much with our technological advancements. People who want to do art and create art are being told that it's not going to last. And how do you combat that? And I think that goes back to his adventure tinted glasses thing and giving back better to the world than you've been receiving, because that's the only way to turn that tide. So that was a great takeaway. I mean, the other two, I have two more, but I think I've kind of said my piece on all of the fantastic takeaways from out there. I can't recommend reading this enough. It really was inspiring and uplifting, and I found a new hero in it through Lance Garland, and I think more people need to meet him. And I would highly recommend listening to his episode and reading his book, because there's not many memoirs out there like it right now. So, in conclusion, although this book is not marketed as a love story, and it shouldn't be, the message of love to others, to the self, to the planet is throughout the whole book. And if you're needing a bit more of that message in your life or want to give it to others, it's a great place to start. And that's all I have for my review on Out There by Lance Garland. Hope you enjoyed.